Now that you have your Maricopa email all set up, let's go ahead and talk about some of the Google Suite that comes with Gmail. So you first of all, you get Google Meet, which is one of the ways you can start a meeting with another student. You can chat with them. But I want to talk briefly about some of the applications here. If you click on this, what we call the it's 9 dots at the top right corner. You have your Google Drive where you can access files. You have Google Docs, which is like Word, Google Sheets like Excel. But I want to talk about the Google Calendar. So if you click on Google Calendar, obviously it'll open up your calendar and you'll see events in here. You can share calendars with other people and see all of their events. But one of the things I want to show you is how you can go about adding classes. Let's say I have a class that starts on Monday, August 10th, and it, let's say it's at 1 o'clock. I can click here in the 1 o'clock hour. And I like to just go to more options because it pulls up a much bigger option here. And I can say it's going to go from 1 to, let's say it goes from 1 to 2 o'clock, right? Maybe it's 1:50, but do I really want to get it exact? Maybe not bother. But the cool thing is I can click on this repeat, and I can do a custom repeat, which is kind of cool. I can actually say, okay, I meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and this is going to end on when the semester ends. Let's say it ends on December, whatever the last day of class is. Let's say it's December 11th, whatever it is. You can figure that out. If you do that, right, and then you can choose some colors, right? So there's a default color for your particular calendar, but you could say I'm going to make all my classes, maybe in Sage or whatever. And then a couple of things: you can add video conferencing. You can add in the WebEx toolbar into your Gmail, and you can add video conferencing. You can actually hook it to Google Meet or hook it to WebEx, and then anyone that has this invite will then be able to click on that link and be able to get directly to your web conferencing, which is kind of cool. And then you can put notes in here about whatever it is. But this could be maybe math class, right? Or you could say math 121, right? And you could add a location, right? We're mostly online for this fall 2020, but we will be returning to in-person courses someday, right? So maybe you're in Estrella 204, whatever the number is, right? And then you could invite other people, right? So you could, anybody you have in your contacts, right? But then once you go ahead and hit save, you'll notice in my calendar, it's added an appointment every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then I can decide if I want to get notifications. I'm going to go ahead and say ask me later, but you could continue, and then it would give you a buzz on your email that, hey, you have an appointment today at 1 o'clock. So you've added that in. So what I'm going to encourage you to do as a student for this fall semester, or any semester in the future as well, right, is that for this semester, I would encourage you to go put all of your classes in on a repeating calendar, right, and then put all your work obligations, all your family obligations, right? All those things should be in this calendar because it helps you to see kind of where do I have time to study. And so let's briefly kind of talk a little bit about what the expectations for studying are for a course. So again, the standard expectation is that you'll be spending 2 hours outside of class for every credit hour that you spend in class in a 15-week semester. So for a full 15-week semester, you should be spending 2 hours per credit hour outside of class. So let's take an example. Let's say you have a 4-credit math class. So you should be spending 8 hours a week outside of class, and then 4 hours a week inside of class. Now, if your class is online, you don't really meet in class. If it's traditional online and you don't have any meeting times, then you have to add an extra hour to what's expected in terms of you doing studying. But for a class where you meet maybe live online or in person, right, you would have to have 8 hours a week for 15 weeks. So you should try to fit in where am I going to study 8 hours a week? Now again, that's a minimum, right? That's the minimum expectation for how much work you should be doing in a course. Some courses are easier for other people than others. So maybe math is one of the courses you maybe struggle in. So maybe you're going to need to spend 3 or 4 hours for every credit hour. Okay, now if your class is only 8 weeks, right, that's like half a semester, right? Then you need to multiply that by 2. So if it was 8 hours a week in a 15-week semester, then in an 8-week semester, you're going to double that. So you need to be spending 16 hours a week in class, or outside of class. So again, you're spending 8 hours a week inside class, right? Because you're doubling the amount of hours in class, and you're spending 16 hours a week outside of class. So that's 24 hours a week. That's why you take one class in an 8-week period. That's a 24-hour job. You take 2 classes. That's a 48-hour job, right? It is a full-time gig. So I'm strongly encouraging you to go fill out a time management activity for yourself. Fill in all your classes. Fill in all your obligations. Right? Fill in time for driving. Fill in time for, making dinner, right? Reading to your kids, whatever those things are, right, that you need to have as obligations. Put them on here so you can get a realistic glimpse of how much time you really have to study this semester.